You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. The thing about inflation is you can feel it when you head for the checkout aisle in the grocery store. And for some families, the only thing stopping them from going hungry is SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistant Program benefits. Here's Taylour Grant.
The price of groceries is so high, so without it, sometimes I won't eat if I don't feel like I have enough food for me and the kids.
During a recent trip to the grocery store, Grant talked about how she's trying to stretch her food budget as far as she can.
I'm a stickler for numbers on these, so like the slightest difference. This is the same pack, but $9.22 versus $8.75.
Taylour Grant let WUSF's Gabriella tag along with her for that trip to the grocery store back in June. Both she and Gabriella join us now. Well, Gabriella, let me start with you. The threat of cuts to SNAP benefits was looming in June. Now Congress has pushed them through. What changes for folks here in Tampa Bay?
Yep. So this was a change baked into the big, beautiful bill. There's been some other changes that affect SNAP and food assistance in some other areas, but just zooming in on this one big congressional change, there's off the top a 20% cut to funding. So that shakes out to about $186 million in the next 10 years. So that's the big headline there. And so that means that average benefits could decrease for many Americans, many Floridians. Some folks might even lose eligibility, and that's because there's some other requirements that are being narrowed or changed that deals with SNAP eligibility. So that could look like increased work requirements. So there's older adults who previously didn't have to worry about this that now do. These are folks 55 to 64. And then parents who have kids who have a youngest child that's 14 years old now, they have these work requirements as well. There's some other changes in terms of how states pay for SNAP. So for the first time, the federal government is kind of passing the buck on some of the bill to states. So that's what I'm continuing to watch here in Florida.
Well, Taylour, you've got a family of 5 to feed, right? So how do you go about planning meals and shopping?
Yeah, so typically right now we have to go each week, and it varies because, grocery bills are going up. So we have to decide if we're going to do meat heavy this week, fruits heavy, and, towards the end of the month, it gets really tight. So we're trying to make sure we can just survive during the week.
Yeah. What have you noticed over the last few years as inflation has kind of ticked up? I mean, are there some things you've had to cut out of the menu?
Of course. So we are not getting as much, healthier foods. The salads and the fruit prices have gone up significantly. And then we're not able to get as much healthy meat, proteins and iron and stuff like that. So that's become a really big challenge over the past few years.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, Taylour, when you were chatting with Gabriella a couple of months ago, is you said your family really likes fruit, right? So
yes.
Are there some things where you may be in the grocery store and you're like, I'd love to grab some of that, but we're going to have to forego that for now and grab something else instead just to kind of make sure the budget stretches to fit the needs?
Yes, just last week we were in the store grocery shopping and my kids wanted watermelons and grapes and, mangoes. I'm like, we can't get that this week. We got to get chicken to make sure, y'all eat good. So it's definitely affecting us pretty big. Yeah,
grapes can be quite expensive, can't they?
Yes.
Gabriella, we heard from Feeding Tampa Bay last week. I mean, they're worried about meeting an even greater need for food assistance, if and when these SNAP benefits start kind of dwindling. What are you hearing from folks?
So I touched base with some of the local chapters of Feeding America, and so that's Feeding Tampa Bay, before some changes went into effect. And the truth is they're also taking some hits in terms of federal policy and funding as well. So one big highlight they had was there's local food purchase agreements. This is essentially like discounted produce that they can get from local growers here. And that's a predictable bulk of the food that they get for food banks. And that's something that's been wiped out under the Trump administration. And now they weren't spending money on this food per se, but they were like a pass-through for this local grown produce. And that was also great for growers in the region to know that, X amount of their harvest was going to, be picked up and not go to waste. And so between that and a perceived bump in demand that food banks are expecting, they're a little bit worried about how they can continue serving as a safety net for folks.
Yeah, you mentioned something just a few moments ago, too. You were talking about how some of this has been sort of kicked down the road to states, right? Like it has been the federal government's responsibility, or they've picked up the cost of SNAP benefits. States are now going to be asked to pick that up. What are we hearing in Florida? Because it's not necessarily a state which has a great track record when it comes to benefits and kind of disbursement of benefits. So what are you hearing?
The way that they've baked in this states having to cover the benefits is there's a 5 to 15% rate that states are going to have to pick up. And that's going to be based on the state's quote unquote error rate. So how erroneous SNAP payments have been. When I talk to experts, they say that, that tends to feel like it's going to address fraud, right? But these error rates can be something as much as, not giving somebody enough money for their monthly benefit. And so Florida and some of these initial estimates from these analyses has shown that it would have to probably cover 15% of the benefits. And so these are the cost of the benefits themselves, not just the cost to distribute them. And in Florida, we haven't heard lawmakers really take up this issue of if or how it would cover that amount of money, which in Florida, that would be about $1 billion in 2028. Oh, wow. Yep. And which for comparison,
I mean, Florida's annual budget is more than $100 billion, right? So a billion here and there is, it sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but like when you look at the state of Florida overall,
yes,
it's not a huge amount.
It's not a huge amount. It's definitely something that would need to, things would need to be moved around. And it's important to remember that these SNAP cuts are happening on the backdrop of some other really big cuts to social programs. So states aren't just talking about how to cover food assistance, but possibly huge cuts to Medicaid that have happened is a big one, and some other programs that states will have to really move some money around. And I know just from talking to reporters in some other states, there are some states that are picking up this issue of SNAP funding in a special session in the fall. Yeah. And in Florida, we've heard, close to nothing about it, except some other changes to SNAP rules last week.
Yeah. So Taylour, just back to you for a moment. Back when Gabriella went along with you shopping in June, we had this kind of threat of changes or cuts to SNAP benefits kind of looming over folks. Now Congress has voted and said, yes, these are going to go into effect. How do you think it's going to affect you and your family?
It's definitely going to be a huge not negative benefit to us because, they're kids. They want, and I know people classify it as junk food, but they don't always want salads and fruit. They want an occasional chip or a juice or something. And with them saying that, they don't need it, they don't want that, I don't even know where to go from here, honestly. When I saw that they approved it, my heart sank because I'm just like, well, what are we going to do? Almost 3 million people depend on their SNAP benefits in this state, and they aren't really thinking about that. So it's just going to negatively affect everyone, essentially. I know, like for me personally, if I do have extra, which is very rare, I try to get extras for maybe the kids at school who can't afford stuff, or, during the summer break when they're home all day. So we're looking at possibly not being able to eat even more now. Yeah,
that was something else I wanted to ask you actually, Taylour, because summer can be a challenging time for families, right? Because schools actually do help out quite a bit with the lunches, and then a lot of schools are helping with some other meals along the way too. Was that a bit challenging for you and your family over the last few months?
Definitely. So for me as a single mom, I have greatly depended on them going to school and being able to eat breakfast and lunch there. So I don't have to make 3 meals a day all the time to go through the groceries fast. During the school year, I still probably go shopping every 2 weeks. So in the summer, I'm going every week.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And if you've got kids with you, it can be hard to steer the grocery cart, right? They're sort of in your ear telling you what they would like to eat and what they don't want to eat.
Exactly.
Gabriella, there was another wrinkle that Taylour mentioned, that the kind of clamp down or crackdown on certain kinds of foods that you can use your SNAP benefits to buy. Cookies, snacks, and things. Just explain what's going on there.
Sure. So Florida is one of, I believe, 5 states now that has put in a ban on junk food for SNAP users. So that means there's now a list of non-eligible foods that beneficiaries can use. And so that list looks like soda, energy drinks, candy, and prepared desserts. And so, Taylour touched on this. It's kind of a catch-22 now. If your funds can't go far to get healthy food now, you also don't have, an easy, ability to grab something that's a grab and go, like chips at a school meal.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also, the notion of really how much control should the powers that be have into what you're putting into your groceries cart, right? As long as you're keeping your family fed, doesn't matter if you're buying a pack of cookies every so often.
Sure. I talked to some food experts earlier this year about this, and, they put it this way. It's like shopping with somebody else in your grocery cart. And I think what's true I know, Taylour, you've told me this, and a lot of other folks, it's really a matter of respect as well. It's, there's a lot of research that shows folks that use SNAP shop just like every other person. And so to put extra restrictions on what you're purchasing really feels like it's not, what's intended.
Yeah. Taylour, how does that feel as somebody who uses these benefits to help kind of balance the budget, keep your kids fed? Is it going to make it more challenging? And what's the kind of sensation you get as you think about, okay, now I can't put this in my grocery cart anymore?
Yes, it definitely affects me negatively. It makes me feel sad that they aren't really considering the magnitude of their decisions. Kids want an occasional chip or cookie, like Gabriella mentioned earlier, a grab and go. If we're just at the gas station, we can't go into Wawa and pick up something to drink. And honestly, a lot of times that's what we get for dinner because it's cheaper than buying the high-end stuff, the high meats and the high salads. So we'll go and get some sandwiches and chips and a drink and make a dinner out of that. So to hear that we're not going to be able to do that like that anymore, it's devastating, honestly.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to take quite a bit more planning to sort of figure out what you need to buy for your weekly grocery shop. I mean, and just for the benefit of listeners too, I mean, if you listen to Gabriella's feature, it kind of explains like you're working full time, you're relying on SNAP to help sort of pay the groceries so you can pay for other things like rent and power and other necessities. And then there's WIC benefits too. So talk a little bit about what you can use with these different kinds of benefits and what you still need to dip into your pocket for.
With WIC, they give you a certain amount allotted for fruits and vegetables. So, for instance, I get $20 of that. So that might cover a thing of grapes and watermelon for them. That maybe will last a week or two. They give you milk and grain and stuff like that, the healthy kind, to just make sure you're getting the nutrients that you need. So when that runs out, then you depend on your SNAP. But with a family of 4, and I also have an oldest special needs child, so she's constantly eating and stuff like that. So we run out way before the month ends.
Yeah. Gabriella, you visited a farmer's market not too long ago. SNAP benefits can be used there too. Let's just take a listen to one of the shoppers you talked to. This is a guy called Joel Chudnow.
Oh, gee whiz, look at this. Kale. We have regular green kale. We have a deep, dark green lacinato kale.
All right, so Joel clearly loves his kale. I love the fact, too, that you picked the most farmer's market-sounding farmer's market to go to, where you got like a band kind of jangling away in the background. Oh, yeah. How does SNAP benefits work at a farmer's market?
Yeah, so SNAP, you can use it at a farmer's market just like if you're checking out at a Publix or whatnot. But there's also an extra special, like, additional program that Florida uses, and there's lots of similar programs across the U.S. They have to be state-based, but essentially there's some extra funds where if you are spending SNAP dollars, you basically get an extra dollar for just fruits and vegetables. So as you can imagine, this is really helpful for local growers. A lot of farmers markets have opted into this, and they keep track of it all with tokens. So there's specific tokens. They're called Fresh Access Bucks, and these tokens actually, these vendors and growers can redeem them for cash, and that comes from the state, and the state gets those funds from the federal government. Right.
So we often think about the folks who are using the benefits to help kind of supplement their weekly grocery bill, but there's the other side of the equation too, these small growers who are benefiting from it as well.
And it's some of the most affordable and nutritious places that you can get these fruits and vegetables. And then with this program, those funds go even farther. And now these funds have been protected. They haven't been cut. But if less folks are eligible or getting as many SNAP dollars as they used to. Because it's a piggyback program, it's, if SNAP takes a hit, so does Fresh Access.
Mm-hmm. Taylour, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the perception of what it's like to be a SNAP user. Like, do you think there are some misconceptions about folks who are using these benefits to help supplement their weekly grocery bill?
Definitely. People look down like, oh, it's just people sitting around wanting to get help from the government. But it's not that. We genuinely need the help. Like she said, working full time, we have rent, we have utilities, kids, everything. To budget that without the help is budgeted with the help is still a lot. Mm-hmm. There's still times I'm taking from rent money to cover groceries. So rent is behind. So now you're facing eviction. And I was homeless for 3 years. I know when I tell you that's really scary to think about having to go back to simply because there's just not enough of anything going around.
Yeah. What do you want people listening to this to know about folks like yourself who rely on SNAP benefits?
That we're real people, real moms and dads who genuinely are trying to take care of our families. We're not just sitting around doing nothing, waiting for a handout, which is what a lot of people think. We love our kids and we want to provide the best for them. And just to think about us when they're making their decisions, when they're seeing us in the grocery store, buying with our EBT cards, don't look down on us. Just give us a good look, a hug or something, because the world is hard and it's a lot harder on us single parents out here.
Yeah, no doubt. Gabriella, how do you think this kind of plays out over the next few months? I guess there's some unknowns, right? We don't know what Florida is going to do to pick up the slack, if it does at all. So what are you going to be looking for?
Yeah, the most comment, we've gotten from the state so far was last week's memo, which was signed by the governor, just setting into place these new restrictions for junk food. I think the logistics of how they're going to enforce bans is something I'm going to be watching. And then certainly we'll watch if lawmakers take up the issue of if or how to cover this new share of SNAP benefits in total. It's not out of the question that Florida could decide to opt out of the food assistance program altogether. Completely. Okay. What's probably more likely is that they will narrow the eligibility harshly so that there's not, so much that the state budget has to cover. But these are all options on the table, and we've gotten very little insight into what lawmakers are thinking. But those are the two things I'll be watching fairly closely.
We've been talking with Gabriella Paul, covering paycheck to paycheck issues for WUSF. Thank you so much, Gabriella.
Thank you.
And Taylour Grant, Tampa area mother of four. She's been sharing some insights into how she shops for groceries for her family and how she gets by with the help of SNAP. Taylour, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, coming up, what are you putting in your kid's lunchbox? We'll chat with a pediatrician about healthy school lunch options. You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. If you've got kids in school, you may have had the conversation about whether to pack a lunch for them or let them have the school lunch. Well, for more, we're joined by Dr. David Berger. He's a pediatrician with Wholistic Pediatrics and Family Care in Tampa. Dr. Berger, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Now, I'm just wondering, Dr. Berger, what do you remember yourself about school lunches when you were a kid? Did you bring your lunch from home or did you eat the lunch at school?
Well, I remember having nightmares about tartar sauce. That was one thing that I wish I remembered. In fact, I was just talking to a patient about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was a pretty picky eater. So, my peanut butter and jelly sandwich had to be cut in triangles with no crust. So I was kind of pretty picky that way. That was my elementary school. It got better and my appetite got better and variety got better as I got older. But I remember things being bland. I remember things not, being overly visually attractive. So most of the stuff we brought.
Yeah. Now, how much attention would you say parents are paying to what their kids eat, both at school or at home these days?
Well, this is certainly something that has very much picked up. I've been a pediatrician now for over 25 years, and the consciousness that I'm seeing in the families that I take care of is rather remarkable in terms of the quality of the food and parents asking me about things from ultra processed food versus processed foods to concerns about pesticides and organics and concerns about, this, what they're putting it in now that we know about plastics and plasticizers and like what kind of drinking water is safe and how
Hmm.
should I send my kid to, so all of those things are now very much a part of the questions that I'm getting asked.
Yeah, and does school lunch come up as well? I mean, you're getting parents saying, "Look, I'm not sure what's going on with my kid's school lunch. What's a good alternative?"
I mean, it's coming up some. I wouldn't say it's coming up a lot. I think most of the families are preparing their lunches. One of the things that I did do a little deeper dive in preparation for this is I was able to actually see the Hillsborough County lunch menu for I looked at elementary school
Sure.
for this upcoming month, and I will say that while it doesn't necessarily talk about how the food is prepared, etc., I would say that the quality and the variety and the healthy foods is a lot better than what I remembered.
Hmm.
I was surprised, even in elementary school, kids are being given Caesar salads and some other healthier alternatives that sounded quite appetizing. So obviously there's devils in the details of it, but I looked at the list and I was like, that's better than I remember.
Is ketchup a vegetable? Can we clear that up?
It's made from vegetables, but once you
Hmm.
start adding sugar to it and salt to it, it's certainly, and depending on if it's organic or not, certainly would fall into the category of an ultra processed food. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so it's made with vegetables. What I'd say, is it more healthy than jelly? Okay, I guess we can maybe go there, but certainly I wouldn't count it as one of the major food groups.
One thing I hear my kids and others talking about actually is red 40. Do you get questions about that?
Yeah, well, the dyes are something that's, I mean, that's obviously been in the news a lot,
Hmm.
especially in the past year. Because of the fact that my practice, which does tend to lean towards the more holistic and side of things, I think a lot of the families are kind of there already in my practice. I realize that it's not necessarily the population at large,
Hmm.
but even so, I mean, like, now that the companies are switching over, of what we're seeing, it's certainly becoming easier, especially since so many of these foods these same companies sell in Europe
Right.
without the numbered dyes in it that they know that they can make it. So it's not a hard changeover for them to do, and it's obviously a demand, supply demand type of thing. But if families are demanding dye free foods and more healthier foods, and I'm hoping that the companies will respond.
Sometimes, my kids will look at the school lunch menu and say, that looks pretty good. That looks like something you would eat. And then they'll come home and say, that is not what they served us today. So what is
Yeah.
advertised is doesn't always match the reality of what they actually get on their plates.
Right. And again, that's why, I mean, I think it behooves us as parents to just investigate more to see what's going on.
Hmm.
Meet with the cafeteria director and see what ingredients are actually in there, how are they cooking it, how they're storing it. So obviously if it's a public school, that's public information.
Yeah.
So it just may take a little bit of homework to like, kind of give a parent the information that they need to make a more educated decision.
How big an impact would you say lunch has on how your kid does academically or otherwise during the school day?
Yeah, certainly breakfast and lunch. We need that fuel there. Obviously, we know what can happen if kids are eating super sugared and the sugar rushes, and how that, and then the crashes that happen afterwards. Obviously from an individual perspective, whether it's an allergy or just, I've certainly had people say, "Hey, red dyes that tweaks my kid." They scrape them off the ceiling to get them
Hmm.
down. So how each individual child is reacting is part of it too. But we need healthy whole calories. We
Hmm.
need to be avoiding ultra processed foods, and even like, a lot of people don't even quite understand what that means. So for instance, using just a tortilla chip that only contains corn and oil and salt, while maybe not as healthy as a salad, is not the same thing as a Doritos barbecue or Cool Ranch flavor, which is a very ultra processed food. So even like potato chips, regular plain old potato chips that is just salt, potato, and oil. Again,
Hmm.
yes, it's fried, and what oil they're using makes a difference, but that's again different than barbecue, which is, it becomes ultra processed. So having an understanding of what of those are can make a big difference. Understanding how much free sugar is in there, because you can't just look at carbs, because
Hmm.
fiber counts as carbs.
Yeah.
So how much added sugar is in something, not just sugar, because an apple has sugar, right?
Yeah.
It's natural, it's not added sugar. So again, that's where having an understanding of what real nutritional content in can really make a difference.
Well, and when you're looking at the labeling of a packaged food. I mean, one rule of thumb I've heard is if you can understand what the ingredients are, like you can say them and understand them, and then it's just like a kind of a series of chemical sounding compounds, that's a good thing.
Right.
Is that a kind of good rule of thumb, or is that a bit of
Well,
a
it's a good rule of
thing?
thumb, but if it says just the words artificial flavoring, that you can understand what that means. But so you still have to do it. But certainly, if there are words that you've never heard of before, and you can still look them up because sometimes they can still be plant derived,
Mm-hmm.
in certain things. So I mean, look it up to see what it is and see if it's a problem.
Right. So when you think about healthy options for kids, I mean, it's a bit of an arms race in terms of competing for the attention of a kid's taste buds, right? If you're, stacking up Cool Ranch Doritos versus a salad, that can be a challenge. Do you get parents kind of asking questions about how do I actually make my kid eat the healthy lunch that I'm packing them each day?
Right. And obviously, to take a step back and how are we educating our kids from day one, once our kids are, so obviously you can't, once you have already a kid in second grade, but, maybe that parent also has a 2-year-old that they can like kind of start a little bit more afresh.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously part of it is just making part of healthy conversations in the household. Like why, obviously parents themselves being role models, if their kids are seeing them eat not healthy foods, and that's not going to be overly inspiring to the kid. But, I tell parents, don't just, eat healthy foods in front of your kids, maybe even over enjoy them, maybe even be a little dramatic about how much delicious this is, the best thing in the world. Hey, do you want to taste how much something that I'm really enjoying? No, okay, great, more for me.
Mm-hmm.
So there are little Jedi mind tricks that I think that we can throw in there to kind of make them a little bit more appetizing, just because if they think about it. But again, that's also where part of that conversation is. Let's sit down here and look at what this pizza is made out of versus
Mm-hmm.
what this what this turkey sandwich has.
Right.
So, but I do think, and I spent a lot of time educating families on how to have those conversations. And I talk to kids about it too.
Yeah. And just in the last 30 seconds or so, getting kids involved in the kitchen, is that a good way to sort of get them more interested in food itself?
And shopping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And shopping, let them pick out things. What I tell parents is, offer your kids choices. Do you want green beans today or do you want broccoli? Do you care whether your kid had one or the other? You're thrilled it wasn't a green M&M.
Yeah.
So those types of choices can also make a difference, and then the kids feel like they're in control too.
Some good advice there as we look ahead to the school year. We've been speaking with Dr. David Berger, pediatrician with Wholistic Pediatrics and Family Care in Tampa. Check out his YouTube channel, Dr. David MD. Thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a nice day.
That's our show for today. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producer is Amelie Horace. Editorial guidance from Mary Shedden. Thanks to WUSF's Delia Colon, host of the Zest podcast, for help with this episode. Our engineers are Dave Anderson, Jackson Harp, Gio Garvin, and Blake Bass. This episode was mixed and produced by Scott Wackler. Subscribe to Florida Matters wherever you get your podcasts and watch on WUSF's YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for joining us.